So today there are really four points or major points that will be made through this video. We're going to do a quick overview of the sample management menu. We're going to talk about how to customize your preload file, meaning removing samples or adding samples that are missing. We're going to talk about how to save your custom sample set and to create a KSC file that you will use in the preload. And then we will talk about how to set up your preload so that every time your Nautilus boots up, it boots up your custom KSC file. So that's what we got going on today. If that's what you want to see, keep watching the video. I will put timestamps in the video so you guys can see where those 4 points come in case you don't want to watch it all. But if you want to understand everything in its totality, you know I'm a teacher and I like to break things down. Just watch the whole video and you'll really understand it. But if you don't, if there are any questions you have, just drop them in the comments below and I'll check it out. Thanks so much. Over the years, one of the most frequent questions, and of course that means the most time that I've spent with people in one-on-one or even in group settings talking about it as it relates to the Kronos, was the sample management. Of course, you know, the guys in church, everybody's want to load these third-party sample sets. Nobody's ever content with the content that comes in the board. They always want to add pianos from somewhere else. No matter how good the pianos are in the keyboard they have, they want to add pianos from somewhere else. They want to add sounds from everywhere else. There's just certain things they want in their keyboards. So over the years, one of the things I spent a lot of time talking to people about is sample management in the Kronos. And, you know, where are my samples? How do I load my samples? How do I save my samples? And so I decided to just jump out here with the Nautilus and just go ahead and nip that in the bud now. Get this video done early, and then it'll be out there for everybody to see from now on. Okay, so the first thing, when your Nautilus boots up, you're gonna pretty much probably come to this set list screen. So how you get to the sample management screen is you're going to go to mode, and I got a kind of zoomed in picture this time of what's going on here, so you didn't see me press the mode button. But the mode button is right here to the right of the keyboard, right above the quick access, and to the right of the jog wheel. So you're gonna push the mode button, and then you're gonna go to global. So once you're in global, we're going to talk about these different different areas on the screen and what each one of them mean. So if you look right here at the top corner, this is your EXS user bank memory. That is how much of your RAM in your board is being taken up by an EXS library or a user bank library. EXS libraries are like the libraries that you would get from the Korg shop, and there are a bunch of them on there. Now that they've ported a lot of this stuff over to Nautilus from Kronos, there's a bunch of third-party libraries that you guys can get. Go check it out. They've got everything from pianos to drums. Just go check it out, man. I'm sure there's something that you can find there and use. But those libraries will be allocated here. It says EXS or user bank. User bank would be the libraries that you create that have been made where they can stream from the internal SSD on the keyboard. So this is the area where you see how much space is being taken up from those. The sampling, just the standard sampling in the keyboard, this is where you would see the amount of space that those samples are taking up. So if you're like doing key sampling where you're sampling sounds into the keyboard from somewhere else, or if you're sampling audio into the keyboard from somewhere else, this is where the you will see how much space is being taken up by those samples. And then this third one, is the green one, is showing you how much space you have free at any given moment. So the Nautilus has I think it's 3 gigabytes worth of sample memory space that's allotted inside the board that the keyboard can see from memory that's inserted. All right, so anything that you have loaded into EXS or sampling will take away from that amount of space. And again, this green one shows you how much space you have left. So we all know that our sample memory is very precious to us, and you don't want to run out. So one of the things I'm going to show you today is later on is how to remove samples that you don't want in your board, and then also how to load samples that you've removed that you want to add back. Okay, so that's what everything means across the top, showing you how many multi-samples can be loaded into the keyboard at any one time. You can have up to 4,000. How many samples? Up to 16,000. And then multi-sample indexes are 16,000 as well. All right, so this next row here shows the bank and type. So you can either have it set to multi-samples or samples. And this bank part is where it shows you all of the banks that are loaded into your keyboard at any given time. Okay, so when you have EXS libraries loaded into the board, this is where you can see what's loaded. You got your German grand, your Italian grand, your Japanese grand, prepared piano, historical keyboards, the vintage keyboards, synth and strings, guitar collection, bass collection, world essence, the background loops, sound effects. Says found percussion, the mono and stereo versions, and then the expansion, the drum expansions, mono and stereo. So any sound libraries that you have loaded into the keyboard at any given moment, you can see them right here. So if you were to push just the German grand stereo, it shows you all of the samples that create that sample. All of the multi-samples that create that sample. Let's see. All right, so we can choose that one, and that shows you all the sounds for that sample. If we can go down here to the Japanese upright, let's go to the stereo version. This is showing you all of the stereo samples that are loaded into the keyboard right now for that sample bank, that sample library. So anything you see here is loaded into the keyboard, okay? So for example, like if you decide that, well, you know what, I don't even use the Japanese piano, you know that you can just remove those samples and then it won't count against your sample memory allocation anymore. So like right now, let's just see, it shows we have 1,456 megabytes available in user bank and EXS memory that we're using. So let's say if we go to, I don't want the Japanese grand in here at all, the Japanese upright, I don't want it at all. So you would just go to, okay, so if you decided that if you decided that you did not want that that library in your keyboard taking away sample space, you would just, okay, first off, you have to find the one you don't want in there. So you go to, I guess we were just talking about Japanese upright piano. So we're going to go to Japanese upright piano stereo. So up here in the top right corner, if you push this drop down box, you'll get a list of a menu list of options from within this screen. You can go to select all, unload all in the bank, or remap multi-sample sample bank. So we're going to go to unload all in bank. Now you can go to select all, and it will select all of the samples that were brought up for that specific sample bank. But what we want to do is we're going to go to unload all in bank. So I'm going to step back one step because you don't actually have to find the one that you want right here, because you can select it in the next step, but you can see a nice list of all of them with their names here if you just want to browse it. So we would go here, unload all in bank, and then right here we would double tap, or we could just use the jog wheel to scroll. Of course, you're just in the EXS number. At that point, you're not exactly seeing what it's what the name of it is. So just to be sure you're unloading the right thing, you can double tap on that, or tap on it. And so we're going to select Japanese upright piano. All right, so that was EXS 303. Now it says this only removes data from memory. It does not affect data on disk. This will not delete the samples from your internal SSD. It only deletes it from what being loaded into your memory. So we're going to push OK. Now before we push OK, I want to make sure you guys see that at the top right of the top left of the screen, it's showing that we have 1456 being used of EXS memory, and we have 234 free. So when we delete this, it should decrease this number because we'll have less stuff loaded in memory, and it should increase the amount we have free. So let's try that. All right, it went from 234 to 384. And the EXS user bank went to 1306. So let's say we're not done. Okay, let's just say that you also don't use the German grand, so you decide you want to remove that one. So again, you push the drop down button, you go to unload all in bank, and you find it in the list, German grand here, push OK, and we're going to watch our free space move up, and our EXS user space is going to go down. To 1306 to 1178, and from 380 whatever to 512. So as you see, you can get rid of a lot of samples that you aren't using or that you don't use regularly enough to allow it to stay in the keyboard and take up space that you may want to use for other samples. But you can also, instead of unloading entire banks, if there's just specific types of samples that you don't want to use, you can remove those too. And how you do that is, instead of using this drop down at the top right and put unloading all in bank, you'll just go to here and you say, okay, let's see, I don't want to use... Let's just pick one just for sake, for example. We're going to go to synth and strings and synth stereo. So you say, okay, I don't use harps. So you would look through this list and you're like, okay, I don't use the contrabass. So you click that and you click unload. Are you sure you want to unload the selected data? Okay. And if everything you unload, you're going to increase the amount of space you have available and decrease the amount of space that your EXS and user libraries are taking up. So let's look for something else that we may not use. Let's see. I don't like harps. Unload. Or you could do multiple select. You could do more than one at a time. Get a bunch of sounds out of here at one time that you don't want to use. So I'm taking the 2 harp sounds away. Going to push unload. Let's see. Like for me, I don't use, I don't like harpsichords or clavichord much. So I don't use those in keyboards. So I could just come in here and just remove all those samples if I wanted to. Let's see. Multiple select. Unload, and that's going to free up some more space in my board. All right, so now you guys know how to remove samples from the keyboard. Okay, now let's just say that you removed a sample and you decide that, okay, I need to put something back in. Now, I'm not exactly sure when Korg added this. I did see it before, but it's not something I really had to use, and so I forgot about it. But it's in the Kronos as well, but it is a very, very cool feature that would have saved a lot of time with friends, and as far as that I've had that to explain or help them get samples that had been unloaded or that they couldn't find in their drive. This little message at the top of the screen is pretty scary when you see it. It says samples not loaded. And so when samples aren't loaded, when you play the sound, nothing is coming out because the samples aren't loaded. So when you see that, if that is a sound that you need, or it's a sound that you want, or a sound that you've used that you need to get back in the board and you removed it on accident, or if you realize, oh, I unloaded everything in the bank, but I didn't want to unload that sound, you can come to the sound and you push this drop down button on the top right, and then you push load required samples, and it shows you all of the multi samples that are available on the board that are missing that would make this sound work. That includes the drum track. See, sometimes you can remove, you don't remove the bass sound like the piano, or whatever sound that you see here in this screen, but the drum track is gone. In order to get rid of the samples not loaded, you can load the sounds back automatically that were associated with that without having to go back into the drive and find the specific samples that you need. You can just load them all at one time. So you're going to push this drop down button here. You're going to go to load required samples. and then you're just going to push. You can go to load only the required samples, which would only load the required samples for the specific program or combination that you're on at that specific time. Or you can load the complete bank, which would load everything in that bank, all the samples that were in that bank. So remember we went to unload all in bank? Well, this would load all the sounds back in the bank, as opposed to just the sounds for that one program. So what we're going to do, we're just going to go to, because I know that I removed all the German grand samples on purpose, we're going to go to load complete bank. And I'm going to show you something real quick. The memory required for loading the complete bank is different from loading just the ones for the required samples for just this one sound. It's not a big difference on this one, but you see there is a difference. The memory required for just this one piano will be 128. But the entire German grand sample library period is 129. So we can just go ahead and load the complete bank. And now, once it finishes loading, we should be able to play that piano sound and hear it. Let's just see. Oh, the drum track was on too. Okay, so that is how you unload all in bank, all the samples in a bank, in a specific bank. That is also how you unload individual samples within a bank, and then that is how you load all the samples back within a bank. Okay, so now that we have that down, that is showing you kind of how you can customize your preload file. Now, you're like, what's a preload file? All right, let me answer that question real quick before we move on to the next section. All right, so when you turn your board on, everybody's always raving and screaming about how long it takes the Nautilus and the Kronos to load up. The reason why it does that is because when you boot it up, there's a preload file that is preset and saved with your global settings that automatically loads a preset or a customized set of samples. So when you turn your keyboard on, it doesn't have to do any more loading at all. So how you get to that and see that, you're going to go back to mode and you're going to go to global. Once you get to global, you're going to go to KSC Autoload, and you see there's a preload KSC. Now that is the preload preset, that is the preset default preload data that was sent from Korg when they shipped the keyboard. Now if you want to find out what's inside of that, you have to dig a little deeper, but I'll show you. If you go to mode and then go to media, you can see, let's see, let me move up to the top of the directory. The first screen that you see is gonna be right here. It's gonna say factory. But if you open that factory folder by selecting it, if the little yellow bar is next to it, that means it's selected, and you push open, you begin to see what makes up that preload file. And this preload KSC is what was set in our preload file. Right here it says preload.ksc. So to find that, we pushed mode and we went to media. The first thing we saw was factory. That's the factory load data that comes from Korg. Push open. And you see preload KSC. You have the preload PCG, which is the program, combinations, and global file. That's all of your settings for your keyboard is saved there. There's a preload song file. There's probably some demo songs in there. And so what you want to do is we want to open this KSC file so we can see exactly what is in there. Just so you can see what's being loaded in your board every time you start it up in those 2.5 minutes that it takes to boot up. And I'll put a link to it in case you just want to see it. If you don't have a Nautilus yet, you want to see how long it takes the keyboard to boot up. I've got a video showing you guys exactly how long it takes to boot up. So I'll put that right up here at the top of the screen, top right of the screen. Maybe this way, I'm not sure which one, but it'll be the top right. All right, so we'll open this preload KSC. Again, make sure the yellow bar is beside it, and we push open. And we see all of those EXSs that we saw earlier when we were looking at the unload all in bank. These are all of the EXS banks that come shipped with the keyboard. All right, so you can open each one of them up. So EXS 301 will go to open, goes multi-samples, will open again. And now we see all of those samples that make up that file. So all of this data gets loaded when you turn your keyboard on. Let's go to the next one. EXS 302, open. All of these samples. All these samples get loaded when you turn your keyboard on. And this is not even inclusive of the actual ROM that's burned into the keyboard that doesn't have to be loaded at all. It's just the standard the read-only memory. You cannot take it away. You cannot change it. You cannot add to it. You cannot delete. Well, you can add to it because you can add custom samples, but you're not adding to the ROM. At that point, you're adding to the RAM. All right? And that's the stuff that, like samples that we're loading into the keyboard. That's the RAM, random access memory, and then we have the read-only memory that is the ROM that is stored into the keyboard that you cannot change. All right, so now that you know how to find what all is loaded there, and then you can't change any of this because you see that it's locked, so you can't change any of the information that is in that drive that comes from stock, but you can customize it and save a new file, and that's what we're going to learn about right now. All right, so we're going to make a new KSC file that can be auto-loaded. So let's just say we've gone through here. I'm just going to remove some more, go back to sample manage. I'm just going to remove some more banks just for the sake of the example. We're going to unload all in bank. Let's see, we're going to load the historical keyboards. All right, let's unload that. Let's unload the background loops. All right, now this is just for example. You can load and unload whatever you see fit. Base collection. All right, so now you see we're only using 999 megabytes of our allotted EXS and user bank memory, and we have 691 megabytes free. We can rewind the video. Remember how much it was at first. It was like 1500 or something like that for the blue one, and the green one here was only like 230 something megabytes or something like that. My numbers may not be exactly right, but we have taken some of that space away, taken some of those samples away, and it's allotted us more space to add our own EXSs or the EXS libraries that we can buy from the Korg shop that I mentioned earlier. Now you have more space to add those libraries into your keyboard and make your keyboard literally your keyboard, being different from every other Nautilus or Kronos out there. If you're watching and enjoying the videos, just subscribe. And then when new information comes out, new videos are posted, if you hit the notification bell, you get a notification so you can stay up to date with everything that's coming out. Please like the videos and leave comments and share them if you have friends or colleagues that you think will benefit from this information. And again, we would really appreciate it. All right, so now that we have that set and that's what's loaded into the keyboard right now, in order to save it, you're going to go to mode and then you're going to go to media. Okay. Now, the bottom of the screen, you have 3 tabs. You have the load, save, and utility tab. You're going to go to the save tab, and let's go up because we want this on the top directory because I don't have another drive or a USB flash drive plugged in here. So all of this information is being saved to my internal hard drive. So we're going to go to save. We're at the very top. None of this stuff should be lit up to let you know you're at the top of the directory, because if I click here and I go to open, now look at that. Now I'm inside of the main directory. We want to go all the way to the top. Okay. Now, excuse me about this being lit up. This stuff can be lit up, but you want to make sure that up is not lit up. Up being grayed out means you're at the very top of the directory. And in case you want to save something inside of folders, you can get into that. But just to make it easy to find, this is like we're going to save on the top of the drive so we can see it as soon as we come here. All right, so we're going to click on the drop down box and we're going to go to save sampling data. Now for this example, I'm going to just name it test. And that lets me know that it's just a test file. You can name yours whatever you like, but this is just for example purposes. Now, we don't have any sampling mode data, and I don't really sample directly into the keyboard. I have before, but for the sake of this example and what I'm showing here, we're not going to use the sampling mode process. Okay, so we're going to go to links to EXS and user sample banks. If you want to do both, you can click both sampling mode and link. So if you're the kind of person where you sample drum sounds or you sample other sounds, or you have audio data that you've recorded that you want to use in the keyboard, you need to make sure that you're either using sampling mode data or using both sampling mode data and links. But for the sake of our example, I am only doing links to EXS and user sample banks. I have test as my name. If you don't have a name, it's going to say unauthorized file. Hold on, let me see exactly what it tells you if you don't put a name there and you try to save it. Illegal file description. That's because you did not have a name set in that file space for the names. So again, we're going to put sampling data and we're going to put test. Apple Pens do work on the Korg Nautilus screen. We've got tests set there. We have links to EXS and user sample banks. We're going to do all, and then we push OK. It is going to create a new KSC file called test. Push OK. It saved all the samples that we have, the links to the samples in that file, just that fast. Okay, now you know how to save your custom set. So the first section, we learned how to add and remove entire banks of samples. And we also learned how to add entire banks of samples or only the samples that are required for a specific sound or specific program or combi to work. All right, then this next part, we just learned how to save that set of samples with everything removed or everything added that we want specific to our needs. And that is there in that test.ksc or whatever you named yours. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to go to mode, you're going to go to global, and you're going to go to KSC AUTOLOAD. And this is the same screen where you saw preload.ksc. This is showing you that it says it has the yellow check mark beside AUTOLOAD. And it's telling you it's going to auto-load the preload KSC. Now I'm going to show you how to set your custom KSC up to be loaded when you boot up your keyboard. All right, so you're going to push add KSC, and it's going to open up a browser to get into the directory of the hard drive of your board. You want to find that file that you named, that whatever you named yours. I named my test KSC, and we're going to push add. And it's going to add that test KSC file to the preload screen, okay? So, of course, well, we don't want to load the preload anymore because that's got data in it that I don't want. So you just uncheck that auto load. And now when you start up your keyboard, your test KSC file is what's going to be loaded into memory. And something really cool about that is that the less data you have loading into the board with boot up, it takes your boot up less time. So all of you haters out there that are saying it takes the Kronos and the Nautilus too long to load up, just take all those samples away, all those good juicy samples that you love and the sounds that you like to hear. Just delete all of them. Delete all of them. And then next time you turn your keyboard on, it's going to boot much faster. But when you get ready to start playing, all those sounds that you like, they won't be there. Word to the wise. So test KSC now has taken, from the look of it, it's showing that the RAM size is only going to be using 1 gig of RAM now. That's $9.99 showing you right there. So they rounded it off to 1 gig. It used to be 1.4 gig of your sample memory was being used. So you took away 400 gigs worth of the sample memory that was been allocated for your new customized KSC file. And now, whenever you turn the keyboard on, well, let me show you something. You do want to save this. So let me make sure. Push this drop down button. Let's go back to KSC AUTOLOAD. Where's the drop down? Maybe we got to go here. And we're going to write global setting. And that saves it. You push OK, and that's going to save the fact that you put that KSC AUTOLOAD right there. Now, you may not have to save it. That might be done automatically. But if you want to be sure, just go ahead and save it. I did not test that before the video. I can't remember exactly, but I think once it's loaded into here, I think it might automatically stay inside of your global settings menu here for the memory usage. All right, so just to test this out, I'm going to take this off. I'm going to go to preload. I'm going to put it on auto load. Now they have an option here that they added called do auto load now. So what that does is, without having to turn off the keyboard, you can load samples or do the auto load just like the keyboard was turning on. You can do that right here live. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do auto load, and let's see what happens with our EXS user bank memory allotted and the free space. It should go back to where it was when we first turned the keyboard on. But remember what it is now. It's at $9.99 and $6.91 free. It's $9.99 used and $6.91 free. Let's remember that, because I'm going to load our test one back up to make sure that it kept the settings exactly like they were when we saved them. So let's go to preload KSC. We're going to do auto load now. It says this will erase all EXS and RAM samples and then load the selected KSC file. Are you sure you want to proceed? All that's telling you is that it's just going to erase everything that's already loaded into the keyboard, and it's going to reload it as if it's loading just that KSC file that you have selected. So we're going to push OK. All right, we're back, and you see it went back to how it was at the very beginning, 234 free, 1456 being used. Okay, so now we're going to remove this auto load, check, and we're going to check the test KSC, and it should go back to $9.99 or 1 gig, right at 1 gig, and then I don't remember exactly what it was here, but I told you guys to remember. Do you remember? I think it was $6.91. So we're going to do auto load, and let's see what happens. All right, we're back, and just like I said, it set it back to the $9.99 EXS user bank space and $6.90 free in the keyboard. And so now, whenever you turn your Nautilus on or your Kronos, it's going to load this test KSC instead of the preload KSC or whatever you named your test file, or whatever you named your file, whatever you will name your file during this process. So I'm going to take mine back off because, like I said, this is just for an example. I'm going to remove that KSC. I'm going to go back to preload, or if you don't want it to preload anything, just turn it off and it'll just load the basic ROM when it turns on. Yeah, so that's another quick trick. I think I'm gonna put that in another video just to be funny. But we're going to take off, leave the auto load on there, so when our keyboard turns on, it auto loads these files, and we're good to go. So that was a quick but pretty thorough rundown of sample management and how it works within the Nautilus. All of this stuff is the exact same in the Kronos. The button pushes pretty much are there, except for maybe you don't have to push the mode button, but you're just basically running between global mode and media mode, and it should be able to get you guys set up. So I hope this helps. You guys. You can make your board exactly what you want. If you don't want samples in there that you're not using and they're just taking up space, you'd rather have, instead of having a bunch of synthesizer sounds or a bunch of drum sounds, you'd rather have more pianos or more orchestral sounds or more acoustic guitar sounds. Go to the Korg shop, look at what you need and buy that stuff, and then bring it back to your board. Get rid of all the stuff that you don't need and put in what you're going to want. And that makes your Nautilus your Nautilus. All right, I hope this helped you guys. Again, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell, like, and share the videos. Leave me a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. If there's anything specific that you guys want to see here or learn about, let me know. I'm here for you guys. Thanks for watching. We're out.